Hello everybody, in this video I'll be showing you how to host website from home. That will be your main objective or focus in this video. We'll also see how to host multiple websites from home, taking advantage of virtual hosts. So stick to the video until end. First, let's look at prerequisites and process involved in getting your website live from your personal computer or machine. Following are the requirements or prerequisites to be able to host a website from home. Server. You need a server installed and running on your machine to be able to serve the web pages. Next in this session, we'll install a server on a machine in a while. Internet and a router to configure port forwarding. You need an internet connection and a router to configure port forwarding rules to forward the request received from the internet to your local machine that's running the server. Static public IP address. You need a static public IP address. You need to request your internet service provider to provide one, and they would provide you one on chargeable basis. Port 80 and port 443 should be unblocked by your ISP. You need to request your internet service provider to unblock port 80 and port 443. HTTP connections use port 80 and HTTPS connections use port 443. Domain and DNS. You need to register a domain name and configure your domain name's DNS to point its A record to your public IP address. Fully designed and developed website. You need a fully designed and developed website. If you don't have one readily available, don't worry. I have left some of the links of best marketplaces in the description box where you can purchase your preferred website builders, WordPress themes and website templates and build your website all by yourself. Or you could also hire a web designer and developer to do the job for you. Now with all this in place, when a visitor makes a request by typing in your domain name in their browser, the request will make its way through the internet to your domain's DNS. And since a record in your domain's DNS is pointing to your public IP address, the DNS will forward the request to your router. And the router, obeying your defined port forwarding rule, will forward the received request to your local machine that's running the server. And the server on your local machine responds by transferring website files such as HTML, CSS and JavaScript to your visitor's computer. And then the browser on your visitor's computer will render the website. These are the requirements or prerequisites to be able to host a website from home. And that's the process involved in getting your website live from home. First, let's install a server to be able to serve the web pages. By default, server will listen on port 80 for all HTTP requests and the server will listen on port 443 for all HTTPS requests. If you are confused about the ports HTTP and HTTPS, by the end of the video you'll understand everything. Just stay focused. First let's download and install XAMPP. Bring up the Google and in the Google search with the name XAMPP, and that will end up with the first result apachefriends.org. It's the official website for XAMPP. Click on that and here is the latest version for Windows. Click on that and that should download. And it finished downloading. Now go to downloads, click on downloads. Now click on show in folder, and this is a XAMPP setup to install XAMPP server on our machine. Now right click on that and click on run as administrator to install XAMPP. Click on yes, close, minimize, and here comes the warning. The warning is that with UAC enabled, some functions of XAMPP are possibly restricted, it seems. So let's disable UAC. To do that, type msconfig in Windows search and that will bring up system configuration. Click on that, click on S and go to Tools tab and select Change UAC settings. Click on Launch button and drag the slider all the way down. Click on OK. Click on S. Now that disables UAC, so you can click on OK now, ignoring the warning. Click on Next. Now clear the components, the ones we don't need. Okay, so we don't need FileZilla FTP server, Mercury mail server, Tomcat, Perl, WebAlyzer, FakeSendMail. Okay, so I've cleared the components, and with these components selected and installed, we'll be able to host both static websites and dynamic websites built with PHP and MySQL. Alright, click on Next Now by default XAMPP will be installed on C drive. Click next, click on next, next, next. Now XAMPP server is successfully installed on our machine. Now choose not to start the control panel now. Deselect this, click on finish. Important steps now. Now we need to allow two .exe files through Firewall. One is htaccess and another one is mysqld.exe. Okay, paths to those .exe files can be seen on the screen. Okay, to allow them through Firewall, in the Windows search type Windows Firewall and that will bring up Windows Defender Firewall. Click on that. Now click on allow an app or feature through Windows Defender Firewall. Now click on change settings. Click on allow another app. Now first let's add first.exe file. You can see the paths on the screen. First let's visit first.exe file. So click on browse, click on XAMPP, then click on Apache, then click on bin, htaccess.exe. If file extensions are not being shown on your machine, what you need to do is press Windows plus E and that will open up this PC. Now click on view and click on options, click on change folder and search options and click on view and make sure hide extensions for known file types is deselected. Okay, click on OK. OK. Now this is the one we need to add in the list of exceptions. So select it, click on open. Now click on network types, select both private and public networks, click on OK, select this and click on add. It says that it's already in the list of exceptions. Okay, so close everything. Now let's add the second .exe file. Okay, that's in the second path. Now click on allow another app, click on browse, click on XAMPP, then go to MySQL, click on MySQL, then go to bin and the second .exe is mysqld.exe. Located, here it is. Click on open, select it, click on network types, select both private and public networks, click on OK, select it, click on add. It says that this is also in the list of exceptions. So close everything, close. Now we are done with firewall stuff. And in case if you are using any additional firewall, for example antivirus software comes supplied with additional firewall. So if you are using any antivirus software, you should follow the same steps to allow httpd.exe and mysqld.exe through antivirus firewall too. Now let's test our XAMPP installation. In the search type XAMPP and that will bring up XAMPP control panel. Click on that to launch. Now start Apache, start MySQL, minimize this and open the browser, and in the browser type localhost and that will pull up a web page, and it pulled up a web page and this particular web page is coming from htdocs directory. htdocs directory is a place where we store our websites and the server will serve those web pages. Alright, so let's go to htdocs once. Press Windows plus E shortcut key, click on this PC, click on C drive, then click on XAMPP, then go to htdocs. Click on htdocs. So this is a place where we store our websites and those websites will be served by the server. And this particular web page is coming from htdocs. So these are the files associated with that web page. Alright, so close everything. Now let's test HTTPS version of localhost. And it pulled up the web page and with the warning message not secure. Your connection to this site isn't secure. It's obvious that it shows warning because we haven't installed an SSL on localhost. Okay, but later in this video we'll install SSL on domain names. That is when we make our websites visible online and accessible via domain names. Alright, now close everything. Now we need to secure database access. To do that, open the browser. In the browser type localhost /phpmyadmin, and that will open up PHPmyAdmin. Now click on user accounts, and here you can see all the default users. The user any is the unwanted user. PMA user is the user used by PHPmyAdmin application, and the root user is a super user with all privileges. Okay, so the user any is unwanted user, so let's delete it. Select it, and here you can see remove selected user accounts. Now that we have selected the user any, now click on go to delete the user any. Click on OK. Now that deletes the user any. Now we need to set passwords for every user. To do that, click on edit privileges for PMA user and click on change password. Now type the password here. Type the desired password here. Now click on go. Now repeat this for every user. Click on user accounts. Now click on edit privileges for root user. Click on change password. Type the desired password. Click on go. Now go to user accounts. Click on edit privileges. Click on change password. Type the desired password. Click on go. Click on user accounts, edit privileges, click on change password, enter the desired password, type the desired password, click on go. Click on user accounts. Now that will end up with errors. After setting password to every user, that will end up with errors and PHPmyAdmin becomes inaccessible. Now let's try to visit PHPmyAdmin again. Localhost PHPmyAdmin. Now you can see that it ended up with errors and PHPmyAdmin is inaccessible. Now we need to fix these errors. To do that, minimize the browser and press Windows + E shortcut key to open File Explorer. Now click on this PC, then go to C drive, then go to XAMPP, then go to PHPmyAdmin and locate config.inc.php. Now open this in your favorite code editor. I am opening it in VS Code. Now locate authentication type and info. Now for authentication type, in place of config, type cookie to use cookie authentication. Let's do that. Now under that you can see user root, and under that you can see that password. So here under the root and for the password, type the password, the one which you have set for root user. Now locate user for advanced features, that is PMA user. Now under that you can see control pass. Now for the control pass, type the password, the one which you have set for PMA user. Now scroll up and locate Blowfish secret. Here it is. Now in place of XAMPP, you need to type desired 32 characters long string. It can be mixture of symbols, characters and numbers. Okay. So type anything that is 32 characters long. So I have chosen a 32 characters long string that was randomly typed and it is in Notepad. I would like to copy that. I'll copy this and paste there in place of XAMPP. Paste it here. Now this is 32 characters long desired string with just characters and numbers. So like this, you need to type 32 characters long string. It can be mixture of symbols, characters and numbers. Okay, you can type anything that is 32 characters long. Now save the file. Now go to the browser and refresh PHPmyAdmin now. Now you can see that PHPmyAdmin is accessible with password. Now enter the password for root user. Now you can see that all errors are disappeared So PHPmyAdmin is accessible. Now let's click on user records. Now you can see that every user has a password. Now close this. Close this. Now let's even more secure PHPmyAdmin. Now we need to change the URL of PHPmyAdmin. Now that PHPmyAdmin is accessible via this URL, localhost PHPmyAdmin. This is how it's accessible. But we need to change the URL. This is very obvious URL. Using obvious URL will be intrusion prone. For example, if someone wants to intrude into your PHPmyAdmin system, then it will be easy for them with obvious URL. So if we have a custom URL in place, it will be difficult for them to guess. Alright, now what we need to do is minimize the browser, press Windows plus E shortcut key to open File Explorer, click on this PC, then go to C drive, then go to XAMPP, then go to Apache, then go to Conf, then go to Extra. Now locate the file, that is httpd-xampp.config. Here it is. Now open this in your favorite code editor. I am opening it in VS Code. Now locate PHPmyAdmin. To do that, press Ctrl plus F to find and type PHPmyAdmin. And here it is. Here, after alias, along the line of alias, in place of PHPmyAdmin, type your desired path. I am giving the desired path as Naresh Ramani PHPmyAdmin. Now after saving this file, PHPmyAdmin becomes accessible via localhost / Naresh Ramani PHPmyAdmin. Alright, now let's save this file and restart Apache, stop MySQL, and restart Apache, restart MySQL. Now open the browser. In the browser, first let's try with our old URL, the obvious URL, localhost / PHPmyAdmin. You can see that PHPmyAdmin is inaccessible via old URL, that is localhost / PHPmyAdmin. Now let's try to access PHPmyAdmin with a new URL. Now you can see that PHPmyAdmin is accessible via new URL. Okay. Now let's type the password for the root user. So PHPmyAdmin is accessible without any errors. Everything is clear. Now close everything. Now if you want to allow someone to access your PHPmyAdmin remotely via internet, you need to know their public IP address. Okay, and we need to give that public IP address in httpd-xampp.config file, so that the user with that public IP address will be able to access PHPmyAdmin remotely via internet. Now let's visit the file. Press Windows plus E shortcut key. Now go to this PC, then go to C drive, then go to XAMPP, then go to Apache, then go to Conf, then go to Extra. Now locate httpd-xampp.config. This is a file. Open this in your favorite code editor. I am opening it in VS Code. Now get back to the same place where you have set the alias. Here it is. Alias Naresh Ramani PHPmyAdmin. In this place, under that you can see directory tag, opening directory tag and closing directory tag. Now under require local, you need to type require IP, then enter the IP address of the remote user, public IP address of the remote user. I'm just typing something here, okay, just to show you. I've just typed a random IP number here, okay. You need to know the public IP address of the user who wants to access your PHPmyAdmin remotely and enter that here, okay. So I've just entered a random IP number here. Here you can also type the IP address of the device within the local area network, and you can also type public IP address. Now save the file. Now the user with this public IP address will be able to access your PHPmyAdmin application remotely via internet. Okay. Now save the file. Now restart XAMPP. Start restart Apache, restart MySQL, close this, minimize this. Now after making the sites accessible online, the user with that public IP address will be able to access PHPmyAdmin remotely via internet. So now that we have taken basic security measures and we've also configured things, ahead in this session we'll see how to make our websites visible online and accessible via domain names, and we'll also install SSLs, each on our hosted websites. So let's start. So let's start from htdocs directory because that is the place where we store our websites and our installed Apache server will serve those websites. Alright, so let's open the browser. In the browser, type localhost and that will pull up a web page, and this particular web page is coming from htdocs directory. It means that our installed Apache server is serving this web page from htdocs directory. Alright, so now what we'll be doing is we'll be deleting all that is there in htdocs directory and see what it brings up. So let's minimize the browser. Now let's go to htdocs directory, press Windows plus E shortcut key to open File Explorer, then click on this PC, then go to C drive, then go to XAMPP. Now go to htdocs. Now let's delete all that is there in htdocs directory. Ctrl A to select all, Shift delete to delete them all permanently. Okay, so now that we have deleted everything that was there in htdocs directory, now let's minimize this. Now let's open the browser. In the browser, let's type localhost and hit enter. Now you can see that it doesn't anymore pull that same web page because we have deleted all that was there in htdocs directory. Alright, so let's minimize the browser. So now what we'll be doing is we'll be copying two readily available websites to htdocs directory and see what it brings up. Okay, on my desktop I have a folder named websites. In that I have two websites. Let me open that folder. Here you can see two folders, coderevenge.com and leafrich.com. Okay, coderevenge.com folder contains the website of coderevenge.com. leafrich.com folder contains the website of leafrich.com. Okay, and coderevenge.com contains a simple website with just welcome message, and leafrich.com is built using website builder which I bought from very good marketplace. I'll leave links in the description box so that you can go there and purchase your desired website builders, WordPress themes or websites and build your website all by yourself. Alright, now what we'll be doing is we'll be copying these two folders and pasting it in htdocs directory. So let's copy. Select the folders and right click on them and click on copy, then go to C drive, then go to XAMPP, then go to htdocs and paste those two folders here. Now that we've copied two folders containing websites into htdocs directory, now let's open the browser and see what it brings up. Minimize this, open the browser and refresh localhost. Now you can see the directory listing here. It listed two directories, coderevenge.com and leafrich.com. Now when you click on coderevenge.com directory link, it takes us inside the directory and it shows a website that is there in coderevenge.com folder. And you can observe the path to here. It's localhost/coderevenge.com. Now let's go back. Now let's click on leafrich.com directory link. Now that will take us into leafrich.com directory and it will show the website that's there in leafrich.com folder or directory. Okay, you can observe the path here. It's localhost/leafrich.com. Okay, now let's go back. Now later in this session we'll be configuring Apache's virtual host so that when you type coderevenge.com it pulls a website from coderevenge.com folder without the path being affected, and when you type leafrich.com it pulls a website from leafrich.com directory or folder without the path being affected. Means when you type coderevenge.com it pulls a website from coderevenge.com folder but the path remains same here in the browser, and when you type leafrich.com it pulls a website from leafrich.com folder or directory but the path in the browser remains the same. That's how we'll be configuring Apache's virtual hosts. Now we'll set a static local IP. Okay, conventionally local IP is also called private IP or internal IP. Local IPs are assigned by your router to identify the device within your local area network. Alright, so Now we need to configure local IP to be static too. To do that, press Windows plus R and type cmd in the run and hit enter to open command prompt. And in the command prompt, type the command ipconfig/all and hit enter. Now that will give the information of IPv4 address, subnet mask, default gateway and DNS servers. We need this information to set static local IP. Okay, now in the search type control panel and that will bring up control panel. Click on that to launch. Click on network and internet. Click on network and sharing center. Click on change adapter settings. Now select the Wi-Fi network and right click on it and click on properties. Now select internet protocol version 4 and click on properties. Okay, now we'll be filling all this information here in this internet protocol version 4. Okay, now check the use the following IP address. Check this radio but select this radio button and fill all this information here. All that we need is IPv4 address, subnet mask, default gateway and DNS servers. Okay, now I'll be filling this information over here. Alright, and IP address is 192.168.1.100. Okay, it automatically picked the subnet mask. Okay, now we need to fill the default gateway. Default gateway is nothing but router's IP address 192.168.1.1. Okay, now here we need to enter DNS servers 49.205.171.194. Okay, and alternative DNS server is 49.207.34.210. Okay, now check the information if it's matching or not. So it matches. Now click on OK to set static local IP. Now the static local IP would be 192.168.1.100. Alright, now click on OK. Close everything. Now that we have set static local IP so that the device's IP address doesn't change locally. Now close everything. Now we need to port forward all internet's HTTP and HTTPS requests to our machine's local IP and internal port on which our server is listening to, so that our sites become accessible online with the public IP. To do that, we need to configure port forwarding. Now that if anybody types public IP in their browser, they'll reach out to your router. Let me open my browser, and in the browser, I'm pasting my public IP address and hitting enter. Now that took me to the router's page. Now if I enter the username and password, that will take me to the router's configuration page. Alright. Now to know your public IP address, open the browser and visit Google and type what is my IP, and that will show your public IP address. Okay. Make sure your public IP is static. You need to ask your ISP for a static public IP. If your ISP has provided you with dynamic public IP, you need to contact your ISP to provide a static public IP so that the IP doesn't change. And you should also request your ISP to unblock all the ports. Most importantly, port 80 and port 443 should be unblocked, because port 80 will be used for all HTTP requests and port 443 will be used for all HTTPS requests. Alright, now close the browser. Now let's configure port forwarding so that our sites become accessible online with the public IP. Now let's open the browser. Now in the browser, we need to type the router's IP address. If you don't know the router's IP address, press Windows plus R shortcut key to open run, and in the run type cmd and hit enter. Now that opens up command prompt. In the command prompt, type the command ipconfig and hit enter. Now here you can see the default gateway IP address. It's 192.168.1.1. That's the router's IP address. So we need to enter that in the browser. Now close the command prompt. In the browser, let's type the default gateway IP address, which is the router's IP address. It's 192.168.1.1 and hit enter. Now here you need to enter your router's username and password. If you don't know your router's username and password, refer your router's manual to know the default username and password of your router and try logging in with your router's default username and password. If you still can't log in with your router's default login credentials, you need to reset your router to factory defaults. But resetting the router wipes off the router's configuration. But you will be able to log in into your router's configuration page with default login credentials. and you need to reconfigure your router. Take your ISP's help to reconfigure your router if you can't do it yourself. Now let me enter my router's credentials. Now that took me to my router's configuration page. In my case, I am using Linksys by Cisco router. In your case, you could be using a different router. And now depending on your router's manufacturer and model, interface for port forwarding, location and naming convention could be different. But the idea of port forwarding is same with any router's brand. Now as per my router's interface, I need to click on application and gaming. Now here you can see single port forwarding. Now this is a place where we configure port forwarding rules. If you can't locate port forwarding option on your router's configuration page, contact your router's manufacturer for support. They will be able to assist you in locating port forwarding option for your router's brand or search online for help. Now let's configure our first rule for all HTTP requests. Let's name this rule sites HTTP, as we are going to configure this rule to handle all HTTP requests. Now for external port is the port number the internet traffic use in trying to connect to your server. By default, all internet traffic use port number 80 to make HTTP requests. So you need to enter port 80 for external port. Now for internal port, enter the port number to which your web server is listening to for all HTTP requests. If you want to know to which port number your web server is listening to for all HTTP requests, open XAMPP, and in the XAMPP click on config and click on service and port settings. Here you can see that Apache 2.4 is listening to main port 80 and SSL port 443. It means that Apache 2.4 handles all HTTP requests on port 80 and all HTTPS requests on port 443. Okay, now close everything. Now you knew that Apache 2.4 is listening to port 80 for all HTTP requests. So that's your internal port number. It's port 80. Now for protocol, you need to select TCP, but let's select both. Now for to IP address field, you need to enter your local IP address of the machine that's running the web server. Local IP address means the IP address with which your machine can be identified within your local area network. If you want to know local IP address of the machine, press Windows plus R shortcut key, and that opens up run, and in the run type cmd and hit enter. That opens up command prompt. In the command prompt, type the command ipconfig and hit enter. Now here you can see that IPv4 address, it's 192.168.1.100. IPv4 address is your internal IP, so you need to enter that here. It's 192.168.1.100. Let's enter that. Now select this to enable this rule and click on save settings and click on continue. Now that we have defined our first port forwarding rule and enabled it, now let's configure our second rule for all HTTPS requests. Let's name this rule sites HTTPS. Now for external port is the port number the internet traffic use in trying to connect to your server. By default, all internet traffic use port number 443 to make HTTPS requests. So you need to enter port 443 for external port. Now for internal port, enter the port number to which your web server is listening to for all HTTPS requests. Now we knew that Apache 2.4 is listening to port 443 for all HTTPS requests. So you need to enter port 443 for internal port. Now for protocol, you need to select TCP, but let's select both. Now for to IP address field, you knew the local IP address of the machine that's running the web server. It's 192.168.1.100. Let's enter that. 192.168.1.100. And select this to enable this rule and click on save settings. Now that we have defined two port forwarding rules and enabled them, okay? Now what actually are we telling the router to do with our port forwarding rules? Let's talk about our site's HTTPS port forwarding rule. With this rule, we are telling the router that any request that comes in with port number 443, forward it to internal IP 192.168.1.100 and to internal port 443. Let's see the same infographically. When a visitor makes an HTTPS request with public IP in their browser, the HTTPS request makes its way through the internet to the router, having the public IP 49.207.10.38, and the router takes note of the port number with which the request was made. By default, all HTTPS requests are made with port number 443, and the router finds that there is port forwarding rule defined and enabled for the request that comes in with port number 443. And the defined port forwarding rule tells the router to forward any request that comes in with port number 443 to specific internal IP and to specific internal port. And the server on that specific internal IP listening to that specific internal port delivers the content back to the visitor as a response. Here in our case, the content that's being served by the server is the website. Welcome back. You just finished seeing how port forwarding works. Now in another tab, let's make an HTTP request with public IP to test our site's HTTP port forwarding rule. Okay, I'm opening another tab, and in another tab, I'm pasting in my public IP address and I'm hitting enter. And that shows up the web page. That means our site's HTTP port forwarding rule is configured correctly. Now let's make an HTTPS request with public IP to test our site's HTTPS port forwarding rule. To do that, type HTTPS :// and then type the public IP address and hit enter. And that brings up the web page too. So our site's HTTPS port forwarding rule works fine too. So it means that we have successfully defined and configured the required port forwarding rules. And now the sites are accessible internet-wide with the public IP too. Next in this session, I will be logging into my domain names registrar's website to point my domain names A records to my public IP address so that our sites become accessible via domain names too. I have my coderevenge.com domain with GoDaddy and I have my leafrich.com domain with BigRock. So I'll show you how to add A records for domain names at GoDaddy and BigRock so that you get to see two interfaces to add A records for domain names. Now let's add A records for our domain name so that our domain names A records will point to this public IP address and our websites become accessible with the domain names too. Okay, now let's open the browser. In the browser, visit your domain registrar's website. Because my domain is with GoDaddy, I'm visiting GoDaddy to add a record. Okay, now it seems like mine is already in logged in state. So click here and click on my products. And it's asking me to re-log in. So let me do it quickly. And it directly took me to my products area wherein I can see all my registered domain names. Now here I would like to add a record for my domain coderevenge.com. So click on three dots, which means more, which shows the options. Now click on manage DNS, and that took me to DNS management of coderevenge.com. Now under DNS records, click on add. Now for the type, select a record. Now here in the name, you need to enter appropriate name here. If you would like to add a record for the root domain, you need to enter @, which means you're applying this a record for the root domain, which is coderevenge.com, and in the value field, enter your public IP address and leave the TTL to default and click on add record. Okay. So now that we have added a record on our root domain, now let's add a record for a subdomain www. Okay, now again click on add record, and for the type select a record, and in the name field type your subdomain's prefix, which is www, which means we are adding this a record for www.coderevenge.com. Okay, in the value field enter your public IP address and leave the TTL to default. Click on add record. Okay, Now that we have successfully added two A records, one is for root domain and another one is for subdomain www.coderevenge.com. Okay, we are adding a record for www subdomain too because users may try accessing the website using the www.coderevenge.com URL. So you make sure you add two A records. One is on your root domain and another one is on your subdomain www. Okay, so we have successfully done adding A records. Now in another tab, let's visit biggrok.com to add a record for leafrich.com. Okay, visit biggrok.in, it is biggrok.in, and click on login. Enter your credentials, login, and click on your domain, register domain name here. Now scroll down all the way down to manage DNS. Here it is. Click on manage DNS. Now click on add a record. Let's add a record on a root domain first. So type @ because we are adding a record or we are putting a record on our root domain leafrich.com. You need to type @ here, and the destination IP address would be your public IP address, and leave the TTL to default and click on add record. Now let's also add a record for our www.leafrich.com. Click on add a record and type your subdomain's prefix, which is www. Okay, destination IP address would be your public IP address, and leave the TTL to default. Click on add record. Okay, remember that when you are adding a record on your root domain, you need to type @, and whenever you are adding a record for your subdomain, you need to just enter the prefix of your subdomain. Okay, www is the prefix of www.leafrich.com. Okay, so I just need to enter www and rest will be taken care of. Okay, now that we have successfully added a record at biggrok 2, now allow it some time. Okay, now in another tab, let's try accessing the websites with our domain names. So allow it some time here. Let's minimize the TTL here. To do that, click on manage DNS. We are doing this to speed or to fasten up the changes. Let's decrease the TTL for both the A records, leafrich.com and www thing. I'm clicking on leafrich.com and click on modify record and lower the TTL to 7200, which is 2 hours, and it's @ modify record. Now click on www.thing, click on modify record and lower the TTL to 7200, which is 2 hours. Okay, and TTL is nothing but the time the server will hold the cache. Okay, closes. Now in another tab, let's try accessing the websites with the domain names. Okay, open another tab. Now let's first test www.coderevenge.com, and that brings up the web page, so it's working fine. Now let's try coderevenge.com. Okay, even that works fine. Now let's try leafrich.com, and even that shows the web page. Now let's try www.leafrich.com. So even that brings up the web page. So it means that we have successfully added A records for both the domains. Required A records for both the domains were added successfully. Okay. Now in the coming session, we'll be configuring Apache's virtual host so that when you type in the domain name like this, coderevenge.com, the website will be pulled from the coderevenge.com directory without the path in the browser getting affected. Okay, and when you type leafrich.com, it pulls the website from the leafrich.com directory, but the path in the browser doesn't get affected. Okay. Now we'll be configuring virtualhost so that it enables us to browse the websites with domain names. Now let's go ahead and configure virtualhost for both of our websites. Press Windows plus E shortcut key to open File Explorer, then go to this PC, then go to C drive, then go to XAMPP, then go to Apache, then go to conf, then go to extra and locate the file with the name httpd-vhost.conf. Open that with your favorite code editor. I'm opening it in VS Code. Okay, now in this file when you scroll down you can see two virtualhost code blocks here. Okay, these two virtualhost code blocks contains the same lines of code, except the first virtualhost code block contains one extra line which is the server alias, whereas the second virtualhost code block is missing the server alias line. Okay, so what we'll be doing is we'll be copying the first virtualhost code block and pasting it here under the second code block. Okay, now that we finished copying virtualhost code block that contains server alias line. Okay, now this code block is in commented state. Anything in commented state is not executable, so we need to uncomment this. You can see that every line has got two hashes at the beginning of every line, so we need to get rid of those hashes to uncomment this code block. Okay, to uncomment this code block, select the entire virtualhost code block and press Ctrl+/ twice. Because every line contains two hashes at the beginning of every line, you need to press Ctrl+/ twice, and that makes this code block executable. Now this virtualhost code block is ready to be configured for any of our domain names. Okay, now what we'll be doing is we'll be configuring this virtualhost code block for coderevenge.com. Alright, so let's quickly comment this on top that this virtualhost code block is for coderevenge.com. In order to comment, type hash, then type your desired text that will help you identify this virtualhost code block easily later. Okay, because I'm configuring this virtualhost code block for coderevenge.com, I'm labeling it as for coderevenge.com. Again, commenting this way is nothing but we are labeling the virtualhost code blocks so that it will help us later to locate the virtualhost configurations particular to any domain name should we have anything to add or make edits. Alright, now let's go ahead and configure this virtualhost code block for coderevenge.com. Please note that in this file we are going to configure the virtualhost for the request that we receive on port 80, that is to address all HTTP requests. Later in this session, in another file, we'll be configuring the virtualhost for the request that we receive on port 443, that is to address all HTTPS requests. Now let's go ahead and configure this virtualhost code block for port 80 requests for the domain name coderevenge.com. Now on line 47 you can see the server admin. You can see that the server admin takes the email ID. Now let's replace the email ID with coderevenge.com's email ID. So let's type the email ID webmaster@coderevenge.com. You can type any email ID that is of coderevenge.com. Alright. Now on line 48 you can see the document root. Document root is the path to the directory where your website files are residing. That's a place where you stored your website. So now let's go to coderevenge.com directory and copy its path. Press Windows plus E shortcut key to open File Explorer, then go to this PC, then go to C drive, then go to XAMPP, then go to htdocs, then go to coderevenge.com directory and copy the path from here and replace the dummy path with coderevenge.com's path. Now you can see that we have copied backward slashes. Let's change them to forward slashes. Now for the server name is the domain name with which your visitors will be trying to access your website. In my case, I would like to make www.coderevenge.com primary. So let me enter that. Now for the server alias is the alternative name with which your visitors will be trying to access your website. In my case, the alternative name with which my visitors would be trying to access www.coderevenge.com would be coderevenge.com. So let me enter that. Alright. Now with this, if the request is received on port 80 and if the requested URL was coderevenge.com or if the requested URL was www.coderevenge.com, then the website will be pulled from this path here. Alright. Now for the error log, I would like to have a separate error log file for coderevenge.com where all the coderevenge.com's errors will be logged to. So what I'll be doing quickly is I'll be replacing this dummy domain name with coderevenge.com. Similarly, for the custom log, I would like to have a separate file where all the custom logs of coderevenge.com will be logged to. So what I'll be doing quickly again is I'll be replacing this dummy domain name with coderevenge.com. So now all the error logs of coderevenge.com will be logged to this file and all the custom logs of coderevenge.com will be logged to this file. Alright. Now let's write few more lines that instructs the Apache with set of our custom rules. First let me write the code. This is directive which is used to impose rules and restrictions inside directories and subdirectories. So any rules and restrictions written inside this block will be applicable to the directory the path here leads to. You know that the path here leads to coderevenge.com directory. So any rules written inside this block will be applicable to coderevenge.com directory. So let's write few rules and permissions inside this directory block so that the Apache gets instructed on what's going to be available and what should be allowed and who can browse the website. On line 56, you can see options directive. Options directive controls the availability of options. So this line options all tells the Apache to enable all the options. So that enables all the options except multi-views. Now among all the enabled options, I would like to disable an option called indexes. So to disable an option, you need to type minus then the option name you would like to disable. Since I would like to disable indexes option, I've typed minus and the option name. Later in this session, I'll be explaining you what indexes option is and why have we disabled it. Now let's move on to next slide. Allow override controls the ability to override the rules with .htaccess file placed inside the directories. Now this line allow override all tells the Apache to allow .htaccess file placed inside this path here from overriding the rules. You know that the path here leads to coderevenge.com directory. So if you place .htaccess file inside coderevenge.com's directory, that will be allowed to override the rules. Later in this session, we'll place a .htaccess file inside coderevenge.com's directory to override the rules. On line 58, require all granted tells the Apache to allow all the visitors from accessing the website. With this line here, we are not restricting anybody, but you can always customize this to just allow one specific IP address and deny all. Or you could also allow everybody and deny few IP addresses. Or you could also deny all the visitors from accessing the website. Refer Apache's documentation to customize the rules as per your requirement and security needs. Now that we finished configuring virtualhost for coderevenge.com, now let's test this virtualhost configuration. So first let's save this file, open XAMPP, stop Apache and restart Apache, close this. Now open the browser. In the browser, type www.coderevenge.com to test our virtualhost configuration, and that pulls up the web page. Let's also test with plain coderevenge.com. Even that pulls up the web page. It means that we have successfully configured virtualhost for coderevenge.com. That is for the request that we receive on port 80 for coderevenge.com. Okay, now the website CodeRevenge is accessible internet-wide via www.coderevenge.com and coderevenge.com. Minimize the browser. Now let's configure virtualhost for leafrich.com the same way we configured it for coderevenge.com. Alright, now to be quick, let's copy the virtualhost code block which we have configured it for coderevenge.com. Let's copy this and paste it below. Okay, now let's replace all coderevenge.com values with leafrich.com values. Let's label this for leafrich.com. And the email ID is this, webmaster@leafrich.com. You can type any email ID that is of leafrich.com. Alright, now the document root is this. Now the server name is www.leafrich.com and the server alias is this. Now for the error log, just replace coderevenge.com domain name with leafrich.com domain name. Now even for the custom log, just replace coderevenge.com domain name with leafrich.com domain name. And the path here is this. Alright, now let's test this virtualhost configuration. First, let's save this file. Open XAMPP, stop Apache, restart Apache, close this, open the browser. In the browser, type www.leafrich.com to test our virtualhost configuration, which we have configured for leafrich.com. And that pulls up the web page. Alright, so let's also test leafrich.com. So even that pulls up the web page. It means that we have successfully configured virtualhost for leafrich.com. That is for the request that we receive on port 80. Alright, minimize this. So what is this indexes option that we have disabled in all our virtualhost configurations? Well, to know that, let's open the browser and try browsing one of our websites, coderevenge.com. You can see the web page, right? This particular web page is the render of index.html. Okay, so any file with the name index gets picked up as homepage whenever you browse any website. So in our case, index.html is a file that gets picked up whenever you browse coderevenge.com. To view index.html, let's go to document root of coderevenge.com. Press Windows plus E shortcut key to open File Explorer, then go to this PC, then go to C drive, then go to XAMPP, then go to htdocs, then go to coderevenge.com directory, index.html. Okay, this is a file that gets picked up as homepage whenever you browse coderevenge.com. Okay, so in other cases it could be index.php. The extension, the language extension can be anything, but any file with the name index gets picked up as homepage whenever you browse any website. In our case, index.html is a file that gets picked up as the homepage whenever you browse coderevenge.com. So what if this index.html is not present in coderevenge.com's directory? What will happen? To know that, let's temporarily move index.html out of this directory and see what happens. Right click on index.html, cut it and paste it somewhere outside coderevenge.com. Okay, now that there is no index file in coderevenge.com. Now open the browser and refresh coderevenge.com. You can see the message forbidden. Okay, so this is what we want to happen whenever there is no index file present in any website. Okay, so this is happening because we have disabled indexes option in virtualhost configuration of coderevenge.com. So let's re-enable indexes option and see what happens. Okay, let's go to virtualhost configuration of coderevenge.com and re-enable indexes option by removing minus indexes. Let's save the file, open XAMPP and restart Apache. Stop Apache, restart Apache, minimize this, open the browser and refresh coderevenge.com. You can see the directory listing. It listed all the files and directories that's inside document root of coderevange.com. This is not what we want to happen. That's the reason we have disabled indexes option for our virtualhost configurations. Because this is not what we want to happen, let's disable indexes option again. Just put back minus indexes again and save the file and restart Apache. Stop Apache and restart Apache and refresh coderevange.com once again. Now this is what we want to happen. So that's the reason indexes option is disabled in our virtualhost configurations. Alright, so that is indexes option. Okay, minimize this. Now with this we have finished configuring virtualhost for the request that we receive on port 80 for both of our websites, coderevange.com and leafrich.com. Alright, now let's place index.html back in document root of coderevange.com. Open this, then go to htdocs, then select index.html, right click on it, cut it and paste it back in coderevange.com's directory. Okay, now let's open the browser and test www.coderevange.com. Okay, now the website is back again. Let's also try coderevange.com. Okay, even that pulls up the web page. Alright, now next in the session we'll be configuring virtualhost for the request that we receive on port number 443 for both of our websites, coderevange.com and leafrich.com. Now we need to configure the virtualhost for both of our websites, coderevange.com and leafrich.com, to address the request that we receive on port number 443. So for that we need to open the file httpd-ssl.conf file. Okay, so let's first minimize this, press Windows plus E shortcut key to open File Explorer, then go to this PC, then go to C drive, then go to XAMPP, then go to Apache, then go to conf, then go to extra and locate the file with the name httpd-ssl.conf. Open that with your favorite code editor. Okay, now in this file when you scroll down, you can see this virtualhost code block. Okay, this virtualhost code block is to address the request that we receive on port number 443. Alright, so here you can see the same variables: document root, server name, server admin and all. Okay, these are the variables we have seen in our previous virtualhost code blocks. Okay, we need to configure this the same way we did in our previous virtualhost configurations. Okay, so what we'll be doing quickly is we'll be configuring this virtualhost code block for coderevange.com. So let's label this on top that this virtualhost code block is for coderevange.com, Okay, now inside this virtualhost code block, let's replace this dummy values with coderevange.com's values. Okay, so document root of coderevange.com is this. Okay, and server name is this. And here you can see that the server alias line is missing. So let's copy server alias line from our previous virtualhost configuration. Okay, go back to httpd-vhost.conf file and copy this server alias line, copy it and paste it below server name. Okay, now for the server admin, let's replace the email ID with coderevange.com's email ID. Okay, you can give any email ID that is of coderevange.com. Alright, now for the error log, give the desired name for error log file. I would like to name it coderevange.com SSL-error.log. Okay, now for the transfer log, give the desired name for transfer log file. I would like to name it coderevange.com SSL-access.log. Okay, now below it, for the rules and permissions, let's copy the directive block from our previous virtualhost configuration. Let's go back to httpd-vhost.conf file and copy this part from here. Select it, right click, copy it and go back to httpd-ssl.conf file and paste it below transfer log. Okay, and give the space around, give some space around. Okay, so with this we finished configuring virtualhost for the request that we receive on port number 443 for coderevange.com. Now let's save this file, open XAMPP, stop Apache, restart Apache, close this. Now open the browser. Now since this virtual configuration is for addressing HTTPS requests, we need to test HTTPS version of www.coderevenge.com and coderevenge.com. Okay, let's type https://www.coderevenge.com and that pulls up the web page. Okay, let's also try https://coderevenge.com. Okay, even that pulls up the web page. It means that we have successfully configured virtual for coderevenge.com, that is for the request that we receive on port number 443. I mean, we have successfully configured the virtuals to address the request that we receive on port number 443 for coderevenge.com. Alright, so now minimize this. Now in the same way, we need to configure virtuals for leafrich.com for the request that we receive on port number 443. Okay, so what we'll be doing quickly is, we'll be just copying this virtuals code block which we have configured for coderevenge.com. Select the entire virtuals code block which we have configured for coderevenge.com. Select it, right click, copy it and paste it below coderevenge.com's virtuals code block. Give some space around, Ctrl V to paste it. Okay, scroll up. Now since we are going to configure this for leafrich.com, let's label this for leafrich.com. Now let's replace all coderevenge.com values with leafrich.com values. Okay, document root for leafrich.com is this. Okay, and server name for leafrich.com is this. Server alias for leafrich.com is this. Okay, and replace the email ID with leafrich.com's email ID. You can type any email ID that is of leafrich.com. Alright, now just for the error log, give the desired name for error log file. I'm just replacing coderevenge.com domain name with leafrich.com domain name. Okay, and for the transfer log, give the desired name for transfer log file. I'm just replacing coderevenge.com domain name with leafrich.com domain name. Alright, now here the path is this. Okay, now that we have configured the virtuals for the request that we receive on port number 443 for leafrich.com. Okay, now save this file, open XAMPP, stop Apache, restart Apache, close this. Now let's test this virtuals configuration. Now since this virtuals configuration is for addressing HTTPS requests, we need to test HTTPS version of www.leafrich.com and leafrich.com. Let's type that https://www.leafrich.com and that pulls up the web page. Let's also try HTTPS version of leafrich.com. Let's type https://leafrich.com. Even that pulls up the web page. It means that we have successfully configured the virtual host to address the request that we receive on port number 443 for leafrich.com. Now we'll be installing SSLs for both of our websites coderevenge.com and leafrich.com so that our sites will be secured through SSL. So what is an SSL? SSL stands for Secure Sockets Layer. To understand SSL, let's first talk about HTTP and HTTPS. What is HTTP and HTTPS? How is HTTP different from HTTPS? HTTP stands for Hypertext Transfer Protocol, whereas HTTPS stands for Hypertext Transfer Protocol Secure. HTTP is the protocol designed for communication between visitor's web browser and web server. HTTPS is just a secure version of HTTP. S at the end of HTTP stands for secure, means secure through SSL certificate. SSL secures data through encryption. That means any communication or information in transit between the visitor's web browser and web server is encrypted. Well, what is encryption? The process of rendering readable information to unreadable state or format is encryption. And what is decryption? The process of rendering the information back to readable state is called decryption. Let's open the browser and let's try visiting one of our websites https:// www.coderevenge.com. You can see that it shows the warning. Your connection isn't private. Okay, attackers might be trying to steal your information from www.coderevenge.com. Now simply click on advanced. Now click on continue to www.coderevenge.com unsafe. Now here you can see the warning not secure. Now when you click on that, you can see the warning message, your connection to this site isn't secure. This is being shown because we haven't installed SSLs for our websites www.coderevenge.com and www.leafrich.com. Now what we'll be doing is we'll be installing SSLs for our websites so that this warning goes away and our sites will be secured through SSL. Now in another tab, let's open another tab. Let's visit google.com. And in the Google search, let's search for WinAcme. So that ends up with the first result. Click on that first link. Okay. So WinAcme is basically a client that helps us get SSL certificates for our websites. Okay. Now click on download. Now here you can see the download links. Okay. Click on the link that shows recommended. So click on that. And that should download. And it finished downloading. Click on show in folder. Now I would like to get this zip archive onto my desktop. Select the zip archive and right click on it and cut it and paste it onto desktop. I would like to paste it on my desktop. Now select the zip archive, right click on it, click on extract all and click on extract to extract the contents onto the desktop. Now it extracted the contents onto the desktop. Here is the folder. Open the folder and select wax.exe file. Right click on it. Click on run as administrator. Windows protected your PC. Simply click on more information. Click on run anyway. Do you want to allow this app from an unknown publisher to make changes to your device? Click on yes. Minimize this. Put this in full screen mode. First, we'll be obtaining an SSL certificate for one of our domains www.coderevenge.com and later we'll be obtaining an SSL certificate for www.leafrich.com. Okay, now here you can see the options. Now we need to select an option from this menu and here it's asking us to choose an option from the menu above. Now we need to choose the option M, which is create certificate full options. Okay, so let's type M and hit enter. Okay, now it's asking us how shall we determine the domains to include in the certificate. Now we need to choose manual input, which is the second option. So let's type 2 and hit enter. Okay, now we need to enter the host. Host is nothing but the domain name for which you want SSL certificate for. So we need to enter the domain name for which we want SSL certificate for. So let's enter the domain name www.coderevenge.com and hit enter. Okay, now it has picked a friendly name www.coderevenge.com for our SSL certificate files. So simply hit enter to accept that name. Okay, now it's asking us how would you like prove ownership for the domains. Now let's choose the first option, which is save verification files on network path. So let's type 1 and hit enter. Okay, now we need to provide the path of document root of coderevenge.com. Here you can see the description. Root path of the site that will serve the HTTP validation request. That means we need to give the path of document root of coderevenge.com. So let's go to document root of coderevenge.com and copy its path and paste it here. Let's go there. Press Windows plus C shortcut key to open File Explorer. Then go to this PC. Then go to C drive. Then go to XAMPP. Then go to htdocs. Then go to coderevenge.com directory, which is the document root. Now copy the path from here. Select it, right click on it, copy it, minimize this and paste it here. Okay, and hit enter. Okay, now it's asking us whether to copy default web.config before validation. Y stands for yes, N stands for no. We need to either enter Y or N. Okay, now let's type Y. Now it's asking us what kind of private key should be used for the certificate. Let's choose the first option, which is elliptic curve key. So let's type 1 and hit enter. Okay, now it's asking us how would you like to store the certificate. Now we need to choose the second option, which is PEM encoded files, Apache, Nginx, etc. So let's type 2 and hit enter. Okay, now here you can read out the description. .pem files are exported to this folder. That means for the file path, you need to provide path of the directory in which you want to store SSL certificate files. Now let's go to conf directory and create a folder there to store our SSL certificate files. Let's go there. Press Windows plus C shortcut key to open File Explorer. Then go to this PC. Then go to C drive. Then go to XAMPP. Then go to Apache. Then go to conf. Now in this directory, let's create a new folder. Right click in this directory and go to new and create new folder. And now let's rename this folder to www.coderevenge.com SSL. Okay. Now in this directory we'll be storing our SSL certificate files. Now let's enter into this directory. Now let's copy the path from here. Select it, right click on it, copy it. Now let's snap this window to the top right. Now let's get back to our WinAcme client and let's paste the path here and hit enter. Now read the description here. Password to set for the private key .pem file. It means that at this point, if you want to set a password for private key .pem file, you can do so. But let's choose the first option, which is none. Okay, which means no password. So let's type 1 and hit enter. Now it's asking us, would you like to store it in another way too? Let's choose the fifth option, which is no additional store steps. Type 5 and hit enter. Now it's asking us which installation step should run first. Let's choose the third option, which is no additional installation steps. Let's type 3 and hit enter. Now on the right, you can see the obtained SSL certificate files. Now among these obtained SSL certificate files, we'll be using this file and this file. This is the certificate file and this is the key file. Now that we finished obtaining SSL certificate for www.coderevenge.com, now let's also obtain an SSL certificate for www.leafrich.com, the same way we obtained it for www.coderevenge.com. So let's do it. Let's get back to WinAcme client. Now let's choose the option M, which is create certificate full options, and hit enter. Now it's asking us how shall we determine the domains to include in the certificate. Let's choose the manual input, which is the second option. So let's type 2 and hit enter. Now let's enter the host, which is a domain name. So www.leafrich.com and hit enter. Okay. Now that it has picked a friendly name for our SSL certificate files, simply hit enter to accept it. Okay. Now it's asking us how would you like true ownership for the domains. Let's choose the first option, which is save verification files on network path. Let's type 1 and hit enter. Okay, now we need to provide the path of document root of leafrich.com. So let's go to document root of leafrich.com and copy its path and paste it here. Let's go there. Press Windows plus C shortcut key to open File Explorer. Then go to this PC. Then go to C drive. Then go to XAMPP. Then go to htdocs. Then go to leafrich.com document root and copy the path from here. Select it, right click, copy and close this and paste the path here. Ctrl V to paste it and hit enter. Okay, now it's asking us whether to copy default web.config before validation. Let's type Y. Now it's asking us what kind of private key should be used for the certificate. Let's choose the first option, which is elliptic curve key. So let's type 1 and hit enter. Now it's asking us how would you like to store the certificate. Let's choose the second option, which is PEM encoded files, Apache, Nginx, etc. So let's type 2 and hit enter. Okay. Now here you can read out the description. .pem files are exported to this folder. It means that for the file path, we need to provide the path of the directory in which we want to store our SSL certificate files. So let's go to conf directory and create a folder there to store our SSL certificate files. Let's go there. Press Windows plus E shortcut key to open File Explorer. Then go to this PC. Then go to C drive. Then go to XAMPP. Then go to Apache. Then go to conf. Now let's create a folder here to store our SSL certificate files of www.leafrich.com. Control Shift N to create a new folder. Now let's name this folder www.leafrich.com SSL. Okay. Now let's enter into that folder. Okay. Now let's copy the path from here. Copy it. Now let's snap this window to the bottom right. Okay. Now let's get back to our WinAcme client. Now let's paste the path here. Ctrl V to paste the path and hit enter. Now here you can read out the description. Password to set for the private key.pem file. Let's choose the first option, which is none. Let's type 1 and hit enter. Now it's asking us, would you like to store it in another way too? Let's choose the fifth option, which is no additional store steps. Let's type 5 and hit enter. Now it's asking us which installation step should run first. Let's choose the third option, which is no additional installation steps. Let's type 3 and hit enter. Now in the bottom right, you can see that we have successfully obtained SSL certificate files for our www.leafrich.com. Now among these obtained SSL certificate files, this is a required file and this is a required file. Okay, this is the certificate file and this is the key file. Okay, now that we have finished obtaining SSLs for both of our websites, now we need to configure httpd-ssl.conf file to pick certificate file and key file of www.coderevenge.com and www.leafrich.com. So let's do it. Let's close this. Now let's open httpd-ssl.conf file to configure it to pick certificate file and key file of our websites. Press Windows plus E shortcut key to open File Explorer. Then go to this PC, then go to C drive, then go to XAMPP, then go to Apache, then go to conf, then go to extra and locate the file with the name httpd-ssl.conf file. Here is the file. Open that with your favorite code editor. I am opening it with VS Code. Now let's snap this window to the left. Now scroll down until you see the virtualhost configuration of www.coderevenge.com. Okay, so here it is. So this is a virtualhost configuration of www.coderevenge.com. Alright, now scroll down until you see this line, SSL certificate file. Now let's replace this dummy path with certificate files path of www.coderevenge.com. So here is a certificate file. Okay, so select it, right click on it, click on copy as path. Now select this entire thing here, Ctrl V to replace the entire thing. Okay, now that we have replaced the dummy path with our certificate files path. Now scroll down until you see this SSL certificate key file. Okay, now let's replace this path with the key files path. Okay, so here is a key file. Select it, right click on it, click on copy as path. Now select this entire thing here, Ctrl V to replace it. Okay. Now scroll down until you see the virtualhost configuration of www.leafrich.com. So here it is. So this is a virtualhost configuration of www.leafrich.com. Alright. Now scroll down until you see this SSL certificate file. Now replace this dummy path with certificate files path. Okay, so here is a certificate file of www.leafrich.com. Select it, right click on it, click on copy as path. Now select this entire thing here, Ctrl V to replace the path. Okay, now scroll down until you see this SSL certificate key file. Now replace this dummy path with the key files path of www.leafrich.com. Alright, so here is a key file. Select it, right click on it, click on copy as path, select this entire thing here, Ctrl V to replace it. Okay, now let's save this, close this, put this in full screen mode. Now let's change all our copied backward slashes to forward slashes. Scroll up, scroll up. Now you can see that we have copied the backward slashes. Let's change them to forward slashes. Now that we have successfully provided the certificate file path and key file paths of www.coderevenge.com and www.leafrich.com in httpd-ssl.conf file. Now let's save this file. Now let's test our SSL certificates. Open XAMPP, stop Apache, restart Apache, close or minimize XAMPP, open the browser. In the browser, type https://www.coderevenge.com. You can see that the warning has disappeared. Now when you click on this close to padlock, you can see the message connection is secure. Okay. Now let's also test SSL certificate of www.leafrich.com. Type https://www.leafrich.com. Okay, even here you can see that the warning has disappeared. And when you click on this close the padlock, you can see the message connection is secure. That means we have successfully obtained and configured SSL certificates for our websites. With this, we have finished hosting our websites. But there is one more thing that needs to be addressed. To know that, let's open the browser and try browsing one of our websites, coderevenge.com. You can see the warning not secure, right? It's quite obvious that it shows warning because we have typed plain coderevenge.com without https://www. Alright, so people may land on these non-secure versions of URLs, and people prefer to type just coderevenge.com instead of https://www.coderevenge.com. So we'll have to make sure all our website traffic lands on https://www.coderevenge.com. So for that, we'll take the help of htaccess file to redirect all the web traffic to https://www.coderevenge.com. So let's do it. So let's minimize the browser. Here on my desktop, you can see the notepad with the name htaccess code. Let me open that file. So this is a code that helps us redirect all the web traffic to https://www.coderevenge.com. Here you can see r equal to 302, which is a status code for temporary redirect. In your case, you could be redirecting permanently. If you want to permanently redirect, you'll have to replace the status code 302 with 301. Okay, here and here. Alright. Now what we'll be doing is we'll be copying this file into each of our document roots of our websites. Okay, and then replace example.coms with our real domain names. Okay, let's do it. Let's close this file. First, let's copy this file to document root of coderevenge.com. So select the file, right click on it, copy it. Now let's go to document root of coderevenge.com. Press Windows plus E shortcut key to open File Explorer. Then go to this PC, then go to C drive, then go to XAMPP, then go to htdocs, then go to coderevenge.com document root, paste the file here. Now let's open this file. Now let's make code edits. Let's replace example.com with our real domain name coderevenge.com. Alright, so let's replace. Example.com should be replaced with coderevenge.com. Coderevenge.com. Alright, and even here. Now let's save this file, close this, Now let's rename this file to .htaccess, which altogether changes the extension of the file also. Okay, select the file, right click on it, click on rename. Now let's erase everything and let's name this .htaccess. Alright, now it pops up a warning. If you change the file name extension, the file might become unusable. Are you sure you want to change it? Simply click on S. Alright, now we have the .htaccess file with the redirect code inside it. Alright, now let's close this. Let's open the browser and refresh. Now you can see that it has redirected to https://www.coderange.com. It means we have successfully placed .htaccess file with the redirect code inside it. Alright. Now what we'll be doing is we'll be repeating the same steps for leafrich.com. Alright. We'll be copying the same file to leafrich.com's document root and make code edits and then rename the file to .htaccess so that even leafrich.com will have a .htaccess file to redirect its web traffic to https://www.leafrich.com. Alright. So let's go ahead. Let's close the browser, select this file again, right click on it, copy it. Now let's go to document root of leafrich.com. Press Windows plus E shortcut key to open File Explorer. Then go to this PC, then go to C drive, then go to XAMPP, then go to htdocs, then go to leafrich.com. Now let's paste the file here. Now let's open the file and make the code edits. Now let's replace example.com with leafrich.com. Alright. Alright. Even here. Okay. Now we are done. Let's save this file. Close this. Now let's rename this file to .htaccess. Alright, let's click on S, close it. Now let's open the browser. Now let's type plain leafrich.com. You can see that it has redirected to https://www.leafrich.com. It means that we have successfully placed .htaccess file with redirect code inside it. Now let's once again get back to our htaccess code that's on the desktop. Okay, let's minimize the browser. Now let's open this file, htaccess code file. This is a code that helped us redirect to https://www.ourdomainname.com. I'll provide this code in the description box for your convenience. You can copy it from there and use it. That's it. Voila. Thanks a lot for watching. If you think that was helpful, please give it a thumbs up and share. If you need more of such content, please subscribe to the channel and hit that bell icon so that you wouldn't miss any of my future uploads and updates. By the way, I've placed some of the links of best hosting companies in the description box in case you need hosting. And I've also placed links of some of the best marketplaces where you can purchase your preferred WordPress themes, website templates and website builders and build your website all by yourself. Or you could also hire a web designer and developer to do the job for you. Thanks a lot. This is Naresh Ramani. Bye bye.